evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of our weekly podcast, Just Politics, Our World View, where we discuss politics in Barbados, the region, and the rest of the world. Remember that you can find us here live every Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. First, I want to express heartfelt well wishes to Elva Marie Tudor, who is one of our ardent supporters. She took ill recently, and I want you guys to join me in wishing her a speedy recovery. Get well soon, Mary. Thank you all for joining us, and welcome again to our show. I am your host, Ayo Olalara, with my co-host, Dr. Terry Harris, and our guest host, Devron Bruce. Over to you, Terry.
Thanks, Ayo. Welcome back, everybody. So, good evening. So, this week we have a very interesting conversation with members of the Barbados Union of Teachers, whom we'll introduce a little bit later. So, please stay tuned with us for that. This week's episode is brought to you by Desiree Properties Inc., Constructing the Future. You can contact them at 624-0593 or by email at desireepropertiesinc@icloud.com. So that is Desiree Properties Inc., Constructing the Future. You can reach them at 624-0593 or by email at desireepropertiesinc@icloud.com. Ayo, over to you.
Thank you, Terry. This evening, I have to unfortunately start on a sad note. The first thing I want to talk about is legendary reporter Larry King having passed at 87. If you're in my age group, and I wouldn't say what that is, then you definitely grew up with Larry King live. As he interviewed literally thousands of personalities, first on his radio show and then later at CNN. You guys remember Larry King live, right? Devron and Terry? Surely.
Yes, I do actually remember watching him. I think it was either 10 or 11 on CNN at night. So I do.
Rub it in. Anyway, closer to home, veteran Caribbean journalist George Allen also passed. He's joined the ancestors. Deepest condolences to his family and to his friends. I also want to extend deepest condolences to one of this week's intended guests, Mr. Rudy Lovell, on the passing of his mom. So therefore, I don't think that Rudy will join us, but we definitely will have Tara and Julian on a little later. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about, obviously, is COVID. The Minister of Health and Wellness has declared that Barbados is now classified as having community spread. What that means is that the authorities can no longer trace the outbreaks and of the clusters to the outbreaks and the clusters to a single source. And that's what he said there. The CDC, though, has since issued a level 4 COVID warning for Barbados for travelers. So, that's a pretty high warning level for travelers coming here. We are far away from where we are last year at the same time. But what does that mean for us on an individual level? I think what that means is that we now have to be extra careful and make sure to follow the personal protection protocols. We need to really mask up, double mask even, keep our hands clean and reduce contact with people outside of our bubbles. We should also be aware that the new UK strain is some 40% more deadly than the old strain. And what I'm wondering, though, is if we are having enough education of the public here in Barbados, is enough educating taking place. I know that the GIS is doing quite a bit of that, but are people really seeing it? I hope they are. And I hope that there is a lot of education also happening on the radios, because as I drive around Barbados right now, I still see people liming in numbers at shops and bars. A lot of people are maskless. There's no physical distance between them, and I feel as though there's more regulation needed. What do you guys think?
Well, definitely. Like you said, the UK strain is 30 to 40% more deadly. So that's not good. It's also more infectious. I think this is around 70% more infectious. So it's easier to get it and it's more deadly. So clearly, I mean, you're almost out of the woods in that, you know, we have the vaccines on the horizon, and we should be this year seeing COVID in the rearview mirror, but you know, we're not out of the woods yet. And it would be a real shame for Barbados and Barbadians to let down their guard at this point in time when we can, you know, we can see the horizon.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Devron? Do you think Barbadians are following their personal protection protocols? Do you think that there's enough education going on right now?
I think many of us are, and kudos to those who do follow the protection protocols and protect themselves and their families. But I think that there is a bit of a laid back personality type within the Barbadian context where we can become a bit complacent. And you know, it can't happen to me kind of mindset that ensues. And we've seen that before with other infectious diseases, STDs and various things that people just assume that they can't have it, they can't get it, and you know, just continue practicing the way that they continue been doing before. So, you know, maybe this spike will be a wake-up call for the country to really pull itself together, individuals really to pull themselves together as it relates to protecting themselves. But we would have to see. I still walk around and I see persons, you know, the mask not being worn properly. And, you know, I'm not surprised, even myself, sometimes, you know, you lapse in judgment and you lapse in protection and various aspects. But for the most part, I think we've been doing a very good job at the individual level protecting ourselves.
Yeah, because I think that a lot of the responsibility for the containment of this virus is going to be on us as citizens. We have to exercise some common sense. I've been seeing too many posts on social media referring to COVID as a hoax still, as a pandemic, and all types of conspiracy theories that really don't make sense. And I would always advocate that people should have a healthy distrust for governments. There are just too many examples throughout history of governments going south for us to exist in ignorant bliss and believe that they're telling us everything that we need to know, and you know, all these things. But right now people are dying, and if people are going to be asking questions, I want them to ask the questions that matter. I want them to stop getting the questions from QAnon and Fox News, and you know, all of a sudden we have all these anti-vaxxers, these anti-intellectuals, anti-science people that are just cropping up, you know, and it's absolutely crazy to me. I was having a conversation recently and someone said to me that he doesn't know what the side effects of the vaccines are or will be, but he knows for sure that the side effect of a side effect of the virus can be death. So he prefers to take his chances with the vaccine. And personally, that is what I would like everybody to be thinking at this time, because there's nothing I can add to that. What do you think? I really want people to exercise some common sense and beg when it really is the only way that we can get past this.
It's so strange, you know, a lot of these people who are the anti-vaxxers in Barbados, you know, I think they're following people in North America. There's a massive anti-vaxxer group and culture up there. But in Barbados, we've always had a tradition of vaccinations. In fact, our people are some of the most vaccine people in the world, right? Our people, because we live in the global south, you know, we live in the tropics where, you know, we have a whole host of diseases, and our people are quite well vaccinated as a result. And, you know, to get into most primary schools in Barbados, your child has to be vaccinated. And we've come up with this, and all of a sudden now people are following others, people unlike us, people who don't have our same tradition, our same history, who don't have our same exposure to diseases apart from COVID. You know, there are a whole host of diseases that we're vaccinated against, and you're listening to them, you're taking in what they have to say with regards to vaccines and so on, and you're moving away from what we're accustomed to. I was vaccinated, my mother was vaccinated. I mean, we've been vaccinated, so the whole idea of being overly skeptical of a vaccine, you know, it really doesn't follow for me. I think is a little bit of hysteria for no reason, for no good reason, and it goes against what we in our country have been doing for a long time.
We're also among so many most educated people in the world. We should be able to just go through information and discern what in this information is correct, or what in it makes sense. These are things that we've been doing from primary school, going through information and discern if it makes sense or not. This is the basis of our educational system, right?
I mean, all of a sudden, can't be can't be wrong. Can't be but the whole idea
I,
about
I'm not
go
I'm
ahead.
not even sure if it's a skepticism alone. I think there's a segment of the population that actually think they're ahead of the curve by
Yeah.
getting special information. The anti-vaccine brigade is a special type of information, and they think that they caught on to something that others don't know, and it actually makes you feel that you're smarter than everybody else, and
Yes.
everybody else are the sheep and everybody else is following the crowd, but you got some special information and you know better now because of that. I think that's by and large what is actually occurring, as opposed to just jumping on bandwagons. We think that they actually have special information and they're better off than what the other people are doing.
They're
Yeah,
more woke than everybody else.
yeah, more
Yeah, precisely.
companies like I mean we're using Facebook, but face companies like Facebook and YouTube and a whole host of these other social media companies have a lot of responsibility for this because I mean they recently kicked Trump off Twitter and YouTube and these people, right? They kicked off Trump. They recently banned Parler, but their algorithms also promote a lot of this stuff, right? Their algorithms are designed. I mean, I teach a lot of this stuff at Durham and at University of West Indies. They're designed to play on your fixations. Right? They're designed to help to have people watch, and so they can take someone who is very reasonable in the center and take them either to the far left or far right in the direction of conspiracy theories. And so the whole creation of we had the MAGA crowd, the invasion of Capitol Hill. That's a function of Parler. That's a function of YouTube. That's a function of Facebook. These social media companies that are feeding people information that they want to watch because it's profitable for the same said company. And some of this information that they want to watch and that they're fixating on is not actually meant healthy for their mental stability. And so these companies need to have some responsibility in this regard. Stop all this promotion of conspiracy theories, particularly around vaccination at a point in time where we need our people to be vaccinated to get over this issue with this deadly virus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to stick up on this whole vaccine thing and corona thing all evening. We know what we're supposed to do. I just want people to act sensibly. We have to get this curve flattened. That's the most important thing right now. I've been almost trapped in my house, not fully because I still have to go occasionally, but when I do have to go, I really try to exercise a lot of caution and I avoid crowds like the plague. Well, it's literally plague I'm avoiding. So I really avoid crowds. And there's this thing that people do right now too. Like if you see somebody in a line standing up, they're 6 feet, 7 feet, in my case, 8 feet away from the person in front of them. Don't stand up with 1 foot behind me. I don't get it, right? That really, really annoys me. So you have to be telling people, well, sir, ma'am, can you just stand 6 feet back or something? And they're annoyed because you're asking them to protect themselves and to protect you at the end of the day. You know what I mean? I want to get back home to my children. But I think that that's in a large part what we have to do right now. We have to follow the personal protection protocols, as I like to call them. Do it for yourself. Don't wait for the government to do it for you. If you don't trust the government, then the head thing that you should be doing is protecting yourself. Don't wait for the government to tell you do this or do that. This is the government that you don't trust. You don't trust them, right? So do what you think you should be doing. Protect yourself and your family. That's all I can say on that right now. Right. So the last time that we met here, or rather, since we last met here, a new U.S. president was sworn in, Biden, and in addition, a new vice president was sworn in who happens to be a woman and a woman of color. So there's still some progress being made in the world amidst all the crazy, right? Biden immediately started putting policy in place to deal with the pandemic, making masks mandatory in public. I really think that our government just needs to go ahead and make masks mandatory in public. I feel like those people who can't wear masks, it's very easy. They just go to the doctor and get a certificate or what have you saying that, we can't wear masks right now. I believe that those people will be in the minority. I don't think it's that many people that would be, that should be exempt from wearing masks. Yeah, and the US also implemented travel protocols, I believe, for the first time. I know there was a ban on China before, but I don't know if we can refer to that as a actual travel protocol because Trump had banned the Chinese, or he said he did, or something. I'm never too sure when it comes to Trump exactly what it is that he actually did. But now the US has travel protocols, and Dr. Fauci, he's also back, and he said that there was a decline since the inauguration in the daily cases of COVID-19 in the country, but being a sensible man and not having to operate under Trump, he also said that Americans basically shouldn't get excited about this because it really may be just a false reading based on the fact that people would have been home and not out on the streets and things like that. So they're keeping an eye on that development, and we are also. Terry, you had a video with Dr. Fauci to play?
Dr. Fauci. Stop pronouncing.
I can never pronounce his name, you know this. What do you guys think, though?
Times today already about the difference that you feel in being kind of the spokesperson for this issue in this administration versus the previous one. Can you talk a little bit about how free, how much different do you feel, less constrained? What is the, I mean, you for so many times you stood up behind a podium with Donald Trump standing behind you. That was a different feeling, I'm sure, than it is today.
Yeah, but you said I was joking about it. I was very serious about it. I wasn't joking. No, actually, I mean, obviously, I don't want to be going back, over history, but it was very clear that there were things that were said, be it regarding things like hydroxychloroquine and other things like that, that really was uncomfortable because they were not based on scientific fact. I can tell you, I take no pleasure at all in being in a situation of contradicting the president. So it was really something that you didn't feel that you could actually say something and there wouldn't be any repercussions about it. The idea that you can get up here and talk about what you know, what the evidence, what the science is, and know that's it. Let the science speak. It is somewhat of a liberating feeling.
Basically vanished for a few months there for a while. You feel like you're back now?
I think so. Okay.
Fauci is free. Fauci unfettered.
Fauci unfettered.
Oh boy. Trump really had America in shackles, right? Intellectual shackles.
Right. He's the doctor with the most experience in this area, and he's a specialist. And here he is. His country is dealing with a pandemic, and he is unable to really use his background, his education, his expertise, really, to get to wrestle the issue to the ground. It would have been tough. I watched him dance very delicate dances around Donald Trump. It's nice to see him up there, liberated, being able to, get a grip on the issue.
Devron?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I mean, the question from the reporter was kind of leading, but that's that's perfectly okay. But I'm glad to see that you're under an administration now that will take things more seriously. They have, I guess, a more interventionist approach as relates to government, as opposed to Republicans who philosophically tend to see government as, a more limited sense, particularly as it relates to these issues. So the change in philosophy is certainly welcome. We will have to see how well the policies work and whether the administration will be successful, because it's going to be quite difficult given how divided the country is and the US is. So it may very well be a sign that you're Republican and American because you're not wearing a mask and these very, very strange and unusual things that people have embraced. So we will see how things go in the next couple of weeks and hopefully in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And we remain hopeful. And we also hope for the best in the UK and definitely here in Barbados and around the rest of the world. The good thing about Barbados is that we don't have a large amount, I don't think, of people who do not believe in actual science. and I am pretty sure that we should get this under control as soon as possible. But here's a quirky feel-good story. Most of you would have seen this meme. There's a meme right now of Bernie Sanders floating around the internet. He appeared at the inauguration of Bernie, being nearly 100 years old, was just sitting down and he fell asleep. There's a meme. Well, Bernie, being Bernie, he saw the opportunity and he did the next best thing. Bernie took this meme that everybody was throwing on everything. I mean, you would have seen it turning up. I saw it turn up on one of my absolute favorite ones because I am absolutely a Game of Throner. Yes, Bernie's definitely king. But Bernie
Bernie's a brand.
Anyway, so Bernie took this meme and he basically put it on a sweatshirt and he charged $45 a pop for each shirt. And those shirts sold out immediately. They're saying in all sizes. They sold out immediately, and then he donated 100% of the proceeds to Meals on Wheels in Vermont. And you know, Bernie is the president that I would have chosen if I was American. I cared as much about American politics as I appear to sometimes. But he would have been the president I would have chosen. Deborah, you disagree, but that's okay.
I'm not too sure that I would. I see some issues with him, but I think generally his heart is in the right place.
Definitely. Anyway, on that note, here ends this week's Hot Topics. Viewers, please note that you can also ask questions and contribute to the program with your comments. Simply type them into the comment section below. WhatsApp us at 833-9886 if you wish to remain private, or email us at jpourworldview@gmail.com. And please keep sharing this live and liking our page as we attempt to grow as organically as possible. We're into our second season and you guys have been great so far at helping us to build this platform, and we appreciate your help and your support. And now on to our main program. Terry, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce our guest. Please note that Rudy Lovell will not be with us this evening. And again, we wish him all the best.
Hey, thanks, Ayo. All right, so this week we have two guests. Ms. Tara Durant, who is an executive member of the Barbados Union of Teachers. Tara has been a teacher for over 11 years. And she has spent some time in Japan over that time. We also have Julian Pierre. He's the public relations officer of the Barbados Union of Teachers. Pierre has been a teacher since 2004. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, good evening. And
Good
thank
evening.
you.
Thank you guys, and welcome again to the show. You know, as a result of the pandemic, children in Barbados, our children now attend school online. There is, to my mind, many positives to this, as I've always believed that the internet and technology in general should be utilized more for teaching. But as many of us know, for years, Barbados we've always been slow on the introduction of technological advances, technology in all areas across the board. So when the pandemic hit, we've had to implement online teaching in an environment where many people were unprepared for it. Whether it was from the perspective of students not having the physical capabilities to be online, i.e., I'm hearing reports that a lot of students don't have electricity in their homes, or they don't have access to the internet or access to devices with which they can get on the internet. And to teachers being untrained or undertrained, to a myriad of other issues. So today what we want to discuss is some of those problems, how teachers have been coping with these issues, and how many of these issues have been worked out with the ministry or are being worked out, and what does the short term future, what does it look like for online teaching, and how viable do you think it will be? I, in particular, am very interested in this topic. I have a 10-year-old doing 11 plus in the next exam, and I also have a 15-year-old who is basically preparing for CXCs. So this is a topic that I have personal interest in. So that's what today's show is about in a nutshell. So welcome again to the show, Tara and Julian. All right. So the first question I want to ask is, I'm going to ask a very broad question and both of you can answer. What would you say is the main issue of, as far as you're concerned personally, facing teachers at this present time? Was their teaching during COVID? Is it the technological shortcomings and the ergonomic issues that they're having with not possibly having the proper equipment, furniture, and so forth at home? Let's deal with those two first.
Well, Tara, you could go first. Ladies first.
Well, thanks for that, Julian. I would say, first of all, you have to deal with teachers having devices to be equipped to teach in the classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a number of teachers who are without devices or who are without proper devices to teach in the classroom. We have a lot of teachers now that you have gone into the home environment who have had an internet connection just to use for, you know, for their own personal things. And now they have to teach all these video classes and they don't necessarily have the bandwidth for it. So you have teachers who are teaching and dropping in and out of classes. So some of the main complaints coming in are they need devices, they need internet. Last year in the COVID season, the BUT had liaised with Flow to get teachers upgrades so that, you know, the internet would work properly for them to teach online. This year again, pardon me, yes?
I heard about that. What happened with that? Did that work out?
Yes, it worked out, and some teachers got that upgrade. And again, now that we're back fully into the online classroom again, the BUT again is liaising with Flow to see if we can get an upgrade for teachers, because that is a concern. If you're teaching at home and you're dropping out of your classes, well then you can't administer instruction to those students. And if you don't have a device, we have teachers teaching from their phones. If you don't have a device to properly teach the classes, how can you actually be giving these students an education if you're not there? Teachers are starting classes and dropping out of them. So we are hearing a lot about teachers needing devices. The ministry obviously has been giving devices to students, but what about the teachers? What about the teachers? And especially because of how quickly we went back into the online environment, you might say teachers can buy devices, but do they have the budget to immediately go and buy a device? But then school has to start at a particular time and they must be ready.
I don't think it's fair to go and buy devices.
Correct.
I think that's the role of the ministry, or at least the school, right?
But I do agree with you, because in every job you're in, you are provided with the tools that you need in order to do your job.
Right.
We are now online. We are providing the students. We should also be providing our teachers. Some teachers have been provided with devices, but then some haven't. So that is a complaint that comes in very often. So the devices and the internet. And then of course, we have a broad age spectrum in teaching. And a lot of the younger teachers have obviously caught on very quickly to the online environment. Right. Whereas older teachers do not feel like they've been adequately trained because they don't understand the technology, but they're expected to perform where they are on a learning curve of learning the technology, but are still expected to give this instruction to a certain level when they don't understand what they are using themselves. Yes, there has been training, but a lot of teachers feel it's not been adequate training. They need more training in order to feel comfortable with the software they're using. We have teachers who are using new software and learning it while they are teaching. They don't exactly know. And that even comes into privacy issues, because if you don't understand the technology, you don't understand how to mute a student, you don't understand how to put them out when they do things in the classroom, like that intrusion that I'm sure everybody saw all over social media. So some of the main concerns coming in, like I said, devices, internet connection, and training in terms of how to use the technology.
Mm-hmm. And some of these technologies, like, you have to actually pay for Maybe you're using Zoom now. If you're going to be on Zoom for longer than I think is 30
40,
minutes.
I think it's 40 minutes.
40 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that being supported, or how are you doing with that?
Well, we use the Google Meet. We use a G Suite. It's mainly private schools, as far as I know, that are using Zoom, but the ministry is using G Suite.
Okay.
So they would use Google Meet, and that would have been paid for by the ministry. So there's no cutout time for teachers when they're doing their online sessions.
You made mention of the fact that some teachers are having to essentially foot the bill for various, whether hardware or software, etc. Has there been any discussion with the powers that be about maybe compensating teachers who have engaged in that kind of activity, or has that not been on the table? Or what are your perspectives on actually having that discussion brought to the table?
Well, that would be a good discussion, but compensation is not what's being discussed. They have asked for a list of teachers who would need devices. So in that fashion, I believe that they'll be looking to get devices for teachers the same way they got devices for students. But where the complaint came is that teachers felt that they were an afterthought. If I am to be teaching the class, shouldn't I be thought of first in terms of getting devices? But yes, so therefore right now there are names in of teachers who need devices into the ministry, and some teachers have gotten those devices from the ministry, and it is an ongoing process, as you would imagine.
If I jump in here, I would have let Tara speak on the issue because by profession, Tara is currently an ITC at her school, so she would have a bit more technical information there where the devices are concerned. Coming from my end in terms of the public relations and what people have been contacting me about. The thing is, as was mentioned before, the teaching service has a range of ages, okay? You would have persons coming fresh out of university or community college, right up to those who are going to retire. For those persons who technology was not a part of their learning curve, it is more or less a whole new world for them. This is Jupiter for them. Some of them may have just learned the basics to even use Microsoft Word. To use a smartphone is rocket science, because I remember one of the schools I was teaching at, one of the teachers who had just then retired, he was still using the Nokia block phone. You know, the Nokia, when it changed from having the antenna, he was still using that phone up until the day he retired. So you can understand those persons who technology was not a part of their growing up, a part of their transition, a part of their training, to have to learn this now in short time, to be experts, then to be in the classroom, to share your screen, to provide something that is interactive, to be able to pause and discuss in between a video. I mean, for us, it is something very simple. It comes naturally for us. But for our aging teachers, our mature teachers, it is a bit difficult for them. Generally, all of the teachers, everybody's willing to try, because at the end of the day, that's what we do. We teach, we instruct, we teach children to be dynamic. And in this way, we too are learning to be dynamic. My thing is, I may be good at PS4, so I will now have to learn G Suite. Other people is different for them. But it's a case now of pooling all of our resources, all of the troubleshooting, discussing the late night calls and messages and voice notes, persons needing help, referring persons to the YouTube channels, which would explain everything video by video, the different topics, the different areas of G Suite. And then you spend the time online at night, during the day, in between classes, looking at websites to see, okay, what content can I get from this website now to use in my next class, to use in next week's class. So for teachers, it's an ongoing thing. Obviously, teachers have their own lives. They have children to take care of as well, to make sure that they too are set with the online learning. So shortage of devices is just scratching the surface of this whole topic of online learning.
I'm being told by Rudy that you're having a number of teachers 60 and over actively inquiring about retirement. I guess because they be very uncomfortable for them right now teaching in an almost purely technological environment. It's very hard to learn new skills after a certain age, especially when you're learning a skill that you have absolutely that you've not been familiar with any of the processes leading up to it. Um, it what do you know anything about this?
Well, at present, as you mentioned, there are teachers who are looking to say, you know what, this is looking to be too stressful. Some teachers would have actually taken time as sick leave, time away during the online time because it has been stressful. COVID, as you know, it is total stress. The stress of the regime, you always have to wear a mask, whether you feel comfortable in it or not, whether you can breathe in it or not. Once you're going in a store, you're around persons, you have to do it. And for some persons, it is only so much that they can take. All right. We know what our personal limits are, and they know what theirs are as well. So for them, if that is the better option for them to keep their sanity, obviously to keep their blood pressure down and live to see their children grow up and graduate at college, because we have to think about these things. It is not just administering instruction to the child online during this time. It is how are we going to feel a year from now, 2 years from now? What is our health level going to be like as well? So as much as we are pushing for the children to make sure that, you know what, there's no face-to-face now, it is online, it's a different platform altogether, but teaching, instruction, learning, interaction, everything must take place. We all have to think about our health as well. But in terms of the teachers who are looking to retire early, I mean, that's something that's common in any profession. There are some persons that figure, you know what, I've had 30 years of this, you know, dynamics are changing. I can't handle it. I can't keep up. I think it's time to go home and relax. And that's their option.
So then maybe we should be actively recruiting younger people for the teaching force right now.
Yeah, well, Erdison Teachers Training College is there. Obviously, there are education programs at UWI as well. These are programs every year going on every term. Some are 6-month programs, some are 12 months, some going to 2 and 3 years. So what they have changed now, because before with our group, we would have started to teach first. So we would have been thrown in at the deep end, started to teach, and then they would have asked us, then, you know what, it is time to go and learn some theory and some technical terms and so on. So then they would have advised us then to go to Erdison and to get the qualifications, get that exposure in the theory of teaching. But for some now, the newer process is that they start with Erdison. So they come in with the qualification and the experience. Part of that program is that they do what is called teach and practice. And teach and practice is you come into a school assigned to a certain class level and you teach, you actually teach, you get that exposure, that early experience to see what it is going to be like when you finish and you're qualified and you're actually assigned to a school.
Julian, you touched on a couple issues that I want to pick you up on with regards to the teachers, particularly those who have children. How your members, what is the feedback from them concerning this work and life balance, particularly those members who have children at home and the children are at home with them, and I don't know how they're going to be getting this done. How do you work? How do you teach with your children there? How does that? What is the feedback from your members concerning that issue?
Well, there are a few members who have complained, and like I said, this entire process can be stressful on several parties involved. So for the teachers that have children, let's say they have 2 devices. Mommy or daddy is the teacher. He may choose to use the desktop because based on the information that he or she must deliver, they may choose the standalone that is more secure and firm for them. The child now may choose the tablet. So in between, because obviously there's a timetable, you set breaks, the principals of the schools would arrange the timetables with each school. No 2 schools has the same timetable, right? That's something individually done. Once you set that timetable, you obviously arrange the breaks in between the 3 hours, because during school time, if school starts at 9, the first lesson starts at 9. Most schools take break time around 10:15, 10:20 on mornings. So you will try to put in breaks the same way, even though you're online and you're home and the fridge is right around the corner, there is still a format of the online teaching. So for those teachers, then they may have to use those breaks where they take the break with the class to check on their child or children to make sure that they are signed on, they have the connectivity, they're paying attention. If an assignment is given, they're actively paying attention to what they are doing. Okay, so for them, it's a bit of juggling. All right, that's why we said teachers are always willing. Teachers are prepared. They're always trying. It is not an easy task. Yes, teachers will complain publicly. Yes, the unions will come and they will speak on behalf of teachers because, hey, it is difficult. It is not the only difficult profession, granted, but everyone has their issues. And for something like this that is relatively new to everyone, yes, we would have had piloted programs in some schools within the last 3 to 4 years, but it wasn't in every school to say it was actively being used. To even say a quarter of the staff or children at each school in Barbados was online, was practicing, they have an idea of what to do. So the teachers with children, like I said, is a bit of juggling and balancing to make sure that they are as professional as possible, to make sure that they deliver to their class, and also to make sure that their children are getting the delivery from another teacher.
And this links back into the whole technological shortcomings issue that we were speaking to before. Because as you said, you know, if you're at home, you have a child, this child needs to be also online attending their class. If you have a limited resources with regards to the technology, what do? Do you teach, or do you allow your child to attend classes? You know, I think in this regard, hopefully the powers that be will be offering some additional support to these students.
Well, I know that Tara, for sure, as an ITC, she can tell you most principals, because everything being new to everyone. If you have a one-off situation where you have 1 or 2 teachers who would have the issue, I don't think a principal will be so hard, okay, not to make some adjustments for that teacher. Let's say it's 1 day in the week or 2 days in the week where you can switch around the times for their lessons so that they can make sure that they have that individual time with their child. So most principals, things have been fluid and flexible and all those other fancy words, but generally we've had cooperation between teachers and management of the school to make sure that everyone fits in somewhere to make this thing happen.
Everyone?
Hi, Julian. You made mention of the fact that there are obviously persons within the teaching sector who are having difficulties in adjusting to the technology. And obviously the formal response to that would be training from the Ministry of Education. But I'm curious as to whether there's been any type of informal yet formal support groups among teachers. You will obviously have a teacher friend, another teacher, a colleague, or what's not, who may ask a question to someone that they may know that also teaches. But have you looked at formalizing any type of support groups that can essentially assist the ministry as it relates to training? For instance, younger teachers who may be more familiar with these things that could have that level of support and assist other teachers where the ball is dropped when it comes to the ministry.
Okay, no, the ministry would have been conducting training sessions at different times between last year and up into this year. Unfortunately, some of the training sessions were limited to only 50 teachers. Now, knowing the number of teachers there are in Barbados, having only 50 teachers being trained in a particular period of time, which may be as long as 3 to 4 days, all right, it will prove to be difficult. As we would have discussed as a union, and Tara being part of our public relations committee as well, being an ITC and hearing it from her end as well, we were able to think and give ideas that we want to formulate for our members this year, where we would have a trainer, so to speak, because we were saying that what the ministry should do is train the ITCs. You train the ITCs then go back to their schools and they train the staff. Okay, you would have certain persons who will be experts. They're at Super Saiyan level of the technology and the G Suite. They are the persons that can be on call should you have a problem. If your ITC explains something that, you know what, I didn't quite get that. The ITC may be busy trying to troubleshoot or support another teacher in another class. Let me ask a friend, let me call this number. So these are things that we are putting into the pipeline through our public relations committee of BUT for teachers this term.
I just want to stick in there and a little plug that the BUT also plans to offer training to teachers as well. And to answer your question, Devon, there are several groups of teachers who have already come together and they have classrooms where they assist each other across the system, where they put information and assist each other. So that's already happening, where younger teachers, where people are all getting together from different schools all over the island and pooling resources so that they can help one another. And that's what we need to do in this profession. We have to help each other. We're all navigating through a different system. Systems come on pretty sudden, and we need to be our brother's keeper. We need to help one another. And that is happening, and I hope it becomes more widespread as we go on.
Tara, I wanted to ask you about the expectance of normalcy in terms of what you're able to deliver as teachers, even in an environment that is abnormal.
Can you expand on that a bit more? What do you mean by?
In terms of your deliverables as teachers, there's certain things that you have to deliver, right? That you're expected to deliver. Has that been, what's the right word I should use there, kind of looked at and reduced somewhat in terms of what your normal deliverables are each term, now that we are in a pandemic and you're teaching in a different environment, in an online environment? Or are you still expected to deliver the same thing?
Right. Is administration expecting the same thing?
Yeah. Right, okay. So obviously, you see, the students are still expected, exam students are still expected to sit the same exams. Yes, exams have been pushed back, but the syllabus still needs to be covered. However, online time, you have less online time than you have in the face-to-face classroom. And to deliver that, while you have less time, 3 hours online, the most per day, is difficult. It's difficult for the students, it's difficult for the teachers in order to deliver that. For instance, last term 3 of last year, in March we shut down. So that was online. So therefore, you had to truncate the curriculum. A lot of schools, everybody did different things. Most people stuck to the core subjects, because obviously you couldn't teach the whole syllabi, couldn't teach all the subjects using the online platform with the amount of hours, because you can't have children on from 9 to 3. Right. And then we had blended learning in the first term, which means that, again, there were sometimes that they were face-to-face, sometimes that they were online. So again, you couldn't deliver the same that you would in a face-to-face classroom. I know we're back to being online, but these students are expected to cover the same material to sit the same exams. And that is why the discussion came up, of course, of pushing common entrance back, the Barbados Secondary School entrance exam, and that's been pushed back. And that's why the talk has come about asking whether CXC will be canceled, the format will be changed this year, because that is going to be difficult for teachers to deliver that doing it in a purely online environment. For instance, I have math teachers that say to me, it's easy to teach English online, but it's very difficult to teach mathematics using the tools that they do have. So the thing is that people have to find all kind of creative methods to get it across. No, I think with administration, it is done on a school basis. Every school is asking their teachers to do different things in order to deliver instruction to these students, but they're still all expected to come up and do the same exams. And the outcry from many teachers is that that's not fair. The students won't be prepared for these exams after we've had all these interruptions for the past year.
Mm-hmm. I know that. What's that happening sometimes? It's happening to you, Pierre. No, it's happening.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I know that my son, who's 10 years old, he was preparing for 11 plus. Obviously, they start preparing them in class 3, right? Well, they prepare all the time, but they really focus in class 3. and a lot of the syllabus seems not to have been covered in class 3, and so his class 4 teacher, she now had to go over a lot of the things that they should have been taught at that time. She had to cover them now in class 4
because of that break in that third term. Yes.
Break. And I'm thinking, well, this is really a lot for her. I mean, she is doing a fantastic job. I could not ask for a better teacher for him, and he actually thinks so also. And she because she's really putting in the time, and she calls you. She doesn't see the children online on time, you know. And I know that teachers are really doing a lot. So my question then is, what about this workload? Because if the syllabus hasn't been truncated, if they're still expected to do the same exam that they would have had to done, whether if we were not in a pandemic, isn't this like really extra work that we're placing on the teachers to have to cover at this time?
Oh yes. Sorry, go ahead. I was saying, oh yes, it's a lot of work.
It seems like it is so much, and I mean, like, she's constantly on them because obviously she wants them to do good. They're class 4 students, and they're
yes.
So, but she's having to put in so much extra effort to get
yes.
what wasn't covered in class 3, and then try to get through and get them up to scratch for what's happening or where they should be in class 4. But she's saying them for fewer hours per day.
Yes, teachers are working extremely hard in the online environment. There's so much preparation. Teachers are, and then teachers are trying to accommodate these students. There are a lot of teachers who are actually teaching students after work hours to accommodate parents. There are teachers who are going online on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, to accommodate parents, because we're not in a lockdown. The country is open, which means that we have a lot of single parent homes. We have a lot of people who cannot come online during the week, who can't come online with their children. So teachers are because especially younger ones, you can't have a session with them by themselves. You can do it with the senior students. You don't need their parents, but you need the parents for the younger ones. And then, so teachers are saying, okay, I'll take them after school. I'll take them on weekends. So the work-life balance for teachers has been obliterated. You find yourself, at this point working 24/7, which carries us into issue the stress, the mental health of our teachers, the stress level of our teachers in this online environment, where there's a public perception that they're doing less. Let me tell you, the teachers are working very, 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 very hard, because at the end of the day, teachers want their students to do well, and they will try everything in their power to get them to do well in this environment. But that does mean you have to put in much more time. You have to liaise with parents more, send information, ask them to work with you, work outside of working hours. So there's a lot of that going on right now in order to deliver, in order for students to cover the syllabus, in order for students to be ready for these exams that we still have, these national exams that we still have, these regional exams that we still have going on.
Concerning at this point, reasonable for, again, the powers that be see in the ministry, perhaps to think about, given the very congested time period and the broad nature of the syllabus, whether these things couldn't be, trimmed down, at least for this year or maybe for next year, so that the students can cover in a more deep way the topics that are included in the syllabus, as opposed to having to cover this very broad syllabus, which in a regular year, teachers I know of complain about how broad the syllabus is. And,
right.
and at this point in time, you're having to catch up on Form 3 work and then Form 4 work. The syllabus, and you have a very condensed period of time in order to deliver all this.
To do it, yes.
Are the students really expected to have this broad and deep knowledge at this point in time? Are we not asking a little bit too much of both the teachers and the students? And then we're going to obviously hold the teachers responsible for the students' inability to necessarily perform. So it may be you're caught in a catch-22 situation whereby you're being told that, taking up the case where Ayo has pointed to, you have to catch up the students on Form 3. You have to take them through the syllabus for Form 4. And then if they don't do well, that's your fault.
that happens often. Yes, and that is why the requests were made. They were asking, teachers were asking whether CXC could not be canceled for this year. That was a question that was posed. Why can't the exam be changed or postponed, or what something should be done because a lot of these students will not be ready. Look at last year with the CXC results, and those that still hasn't been finalized. In fact, it's going to court, as you would know. So the thing is that are we really doing right by our students insisting that they must do the same exams after we're in a pandemic and delivering those instructions have been broken up so much for these students? Are we also thinking about the mental health of these students? Because these students as well, they're also being impacted. Students are having mental breakdowns as well. And then you're still asking them to academically perform to this level.
Yeah, and if you exams, then why is the time period not being extended to take into consideration the fact that, you know, if the students are meant to have this broad and deep knowledge, we need to give them time in order to learn. Pierre, sorry, Julian.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing that is missing a bit, and where there will be a breakdown, is for those students who usually get remedial help. There are some schools that would have remedial divisions or remedial departments where they would get almost individual attention. Now, obviously, that is most effective in a face-to-face environment. With the technology, as Tara mentioned, if you have parents who have gone to work, even for that child at, let's say, 10 years old, to maneuver through the class, not being able to read certain words. So it has to be a case where the relationship with the child, the parent, and the teacher is boosted now, where we are all in this together. Let us try to make this thing work, because it's new to everybody. It's new to the parents, new to the students, new to the teachers. Let's just try together as a unit, because it is so difficult for some. These remedial students, now if I can't spell tablet, I mean, when they get to see certain work and an assignment is given to me because the teacher gives it to me, if no one is there to help prompt me, and I mean, there's only so much time in a lesson for a teacher to juggle between each screen. Let's say it's a class of 25 students, and in that class of 25 students, there may be 10 to 15 who need that individual attention. So in, let's say, a 40-minute lesson, which was stipulated by the ministry in terms of length of time and the eyes on the screen, right, if you have that limited time to begin with, some of those children are going, I don't want to say be left out, but some of those children are going to miss some of the information there. Now, this calls then for repetition, where teachers now would have to repeat concepts, repeat lessons. It may take, in this online environment, it may take 10 lessons, 10 online lessons to actually grasp one topic. Now, we would know that within education, there are certain topics that are built on. Certain topics are the foundation. For example, fractions. You have to learn from infants. A fraction is a part of a whole. And once you understand the concept of a fraction being a part of a whole, you go into money. Cents is a fraction of dollars. You go into percentages. What is a percentage of 100%? All of these things. So to make sure that children get certain foundation topics in, there has to be repetition. So then there's some persons, then when you gauge, it is like, you know what, you haven't covered many topics, because the dynamic of teaching online, the dynamic of the children trying to grasp it online now, and the teacher is not there to give individual help, all of these things tend to prolong the syllabus not being covered.
Right.
So, you know, it's just mayhem that everyone is trying to keep the dust low and to make things happen for everybody.
I want to read a WhatsApp message coming in from one of the viewers who's apparently a teacher. And they're saying that the Ministry of Education, in conjunction with the Earlston Teachers College, ran a series of short workshops for teachers, but these were limited in numbers. Said that the ITCs are then expected to pick up the slack and reinforce those workshops. Consolidate and clarify this information received during the training sessions. She also says, kudos to you, Ms. Durant, in the absence of an ITC at your school, that she's been reaching out to you, and she has been, and you have been graciously accommodating her with getting up to scratch on that. So I guess that's an example of what we were talking about earlier about the teachers helping each other to come up to scratch basically and get a grasp on the technology so that they can teach adequately.
Can I jump in here really quickly?
Yeah.
So we were talking about quality assurance issues and some of the problems that are currently occurring, but is there any real indication that shows, oh my goodness, these children are really not performing, or these children are really not learning, even in the instances where you do teach what needs to be taught? Not talking about the aspects that aren't being taught, but certainly when you do go through something thoroughly and you thought you did a good job, but yet you see the results are dramatically different than what you would have expected in an online environment. Are you seeing that occurring? I would start with that one. And then Tara made mention of the psychological effect. I can make mention on a personal level. I have been working from home since March last year. And my house has always been associated with a place of comfort and relaxation. But now mixing work and home is a very different circumstance, and you don't know where then your place of comfort resides. So have you had teachers essentially reaching out, asking for that, psychological help or advice on, how do I wind down away from being at work and being at home at the same time? Do you have those issues occurring?
Well, actually, we do have those issues. You would find that the psychological institute, I can't remember the exact name, but they have been sending out a lot of information on Facebook. They've been working with the ministry in terms of getting the information out on Facebook pages and social media to reach out to persons who are in need of assistance, who just think, you know what, this is so much, I need to take a break. So there is that avenue there for teachers as well. You would appreciate that there are some teachers who have a background in psychology that may have been their major from university. So they too can help at their individual schools, those persons that they can trust with a bit of information to say, you know what, I need some help. Can you help me? Can you help get me through? So even for someone like me, there are times that I would just post stuff on my WhatsApp status, and there are persons then that would just message and say, you know what, I needed that quote. I needed to see that. You support to me through that. So simple things like these that we do, we just try to help everybody to be as peaceful as we can to make this thing work.
I have a question here that I want to ask about because I mean, if it's a struggle teaching the entire class right now, but I must say that sometimes we have to check our privilege, right? And even though we see certain things as a struggle, we're really in a privileged position even to have that struggle. Yeah. So I just want to say that in relation to one of the questions that's being asked there, where she's saying that what about the children who have challenges with reading, diction, and those children who are really slower than the rest of the class. But I want to add to that, how do children who have those issues, and then those people who are really on the privilege, those children who don't have electricity, because I mean, this is Barbados, but we still have a lot of people without indoor plumbing and electricity. Mm-hmm. How are those children being dealt with? I know that a lot of civil society and the government, the ministry and so forth have been making sure that students have devices, but what happens if you have a device but you don't have electricity? How are those things being dealt with basically? Or are we just leaving those people behind?
Let me first interject about the students who have no electricity and ergo would have no internet. Now, electricity is something hard to deal with on the whole, but if you have no internet, you can apply for a device, a SIM-enabled device, and the ministry, you can get a SIM that will give you access. So those students who don't have internet access can still get a device from the ministry that they can use. With those who have no electricity now to charge a device, that presents a different issue. I do know that there are schools who have been printing packages for students and having drop-off points for the parents to get the packages so that the students can still do work even if they don't have a device or can get online. Because remember, at the end of the day, teachers don't want their students to be left behind. So these are some of the strategies that they have been doing for those students.
And also,
if I may, in terms of my school,
I just wanted to point out that that was Michelin John DeLife who had asked that question. Carry on.
right, if I may, in terms of my school, we have started a remedial program for those students. So provision is actually made within the timetable to have a session with those students, with that particular teacher, where they can have, because obviously now it's a subclass, so you want to have the full number of the regular class now. So she may be working with no more than 10 students during that session. So some of them would be on a similar level where in terms of the content that she uses for her lesson, she is able to direct certain things to each person for a particular segment of the lesson. Before then, she's able to recap or check to see, have they grasped anything from the lesson today? So for my individual school, I can say for sure that is something that we undertook because we understand that with the remedial children, they too need to be taught. So there comes a plan B now where you break them away from the main class, all right, for that individual attention in those smaller groups. But it is still a difficult thing because if you don't have enough staff members to facilitate that, they still have to get in their 3 hours with their regular class. So if you have a senior teacher or an early childhood coordinator in terms of their timetable being a little easier, where they then can lend some assistance and say, you know what, let me add on 10 extra periods a week to these children that need it, because at the end of the day, we don't want them dropping too far behind. We try to bring everyone along.
Well, that's good to hear, because those students obviously will be of major concern at this point in time in particular. I just want to go back to a point you raised earlier, Julian, concerning the eye strain and the concerns that teachers will have at this point in time with regards to their health. You're at home, you're teaching from at home. It's not necessarily the case that you would have the appropriate chair to be sitting in for long periods of time, to be staring at a computer screen. What are some of the concerns teachers have raised with regards to this?
Well, up to recently, we would have had a meeting with our members just this past Wednesday, where that was mentioned, because as I mentioned earlier in the show, home is built for relaxation and to de-stress. So in terms of the chairs at home, I mean, you have the sofa, you can't teach from the sofa. It's going to be a little too comfortable to keep that level of attention, right? But some teachers have actually asked, and as we would have said from our level at union level, we also have a principal as part of our executive. We are human beings. And I believe that if a teacher asks, the principal, can I use my chair, for example? If my chair has the ergonomic features, all right, that keeps me comfortable during the teaching day. And another thing, truth be told, a lot of the chairs that we have don't carry those features. And this is just a little plug for teachers, because most teachers are on their feet, all right, during the lesson. We don't do a lot of sitting, but when we actually do sit, a lot of the chairs don't carry those features that we would need in terms of back support, shoulder support, neck, and everything. But there's some of them, the teachers who are lucky enough to have those types of chairs, they have asked, can we use our chair at home? Me personally, I don't see it being an issue, because at the end of the day, it is all about getting the job done. That's my aim. But I know that some teachers have asked. I know that they would liaise with their principals and they will go from there.
I just want to say as well too that the BUT conducted some ergonomics training with teachers last week, and a presentation done by our second VP, Ruby Lovell, was also uploaded by the ministry in terms of speaking about ergonomics at home and the best things teachers can do for themselves. Because as we would know, like I said, a lot of our teachers, we have a broad age range, but not only even age range. People might have sciatica, back problems, these kind of things that can be exacerbated by the home environment and not having the correct furniture, correct posture for online teaching.
Yeah, I mean, it's an issue because while you were in the classroom, you would have been standing, as you said, you know, so you're not sitting for as extended a period of time as you are going to be sitting now that you're teaching from essentially the computer screen, right? So it's a big issue, a bigger issue now, I think, one that going forward, I think the ministry and the schools need to look into to ensure that teachers are comfortable and actually safe, because this is a health issue. This is a hazard. This is a hazard, right? That they're actually safe while they're delivering the subjects. Are you any more questions from the audience?
Just to say, it has even gone as far because in earlier times of the online platform, the transition, some teachers would have positioned their camera and actually have their own little chalkboards and whiteboards at home that they would have been using. Now, as time went on, we were able to realize that there are apps that have whiteboard apps where you can actually do the typing and teaching while you present your screen, that the children will see it the same way. It is live, it is interactive. You can actually have a board for each child in the class where the teacher manages the session now, and she can look to see what each child is writing individually by their screen to know, you know what, this child is wrong, this child isn't wrong. Maybe you need to call this parent after the session. So we are learning as time goes on, you know, by trial and error to try to make this thing work. So from positioning the screen far away now to presenting the screen and everything is close up and right there and clear for you to see.
Okay, so I have two comments from the audience. I'm gonna direct the last one to you, Tara, because I think I remember in your bio that you work with disabled children or special needs school. I'm correct on that?
Yes, I work at a special needs school.
Right, okay. So, but the first one I'm gonna read first is, this is a WhatsApp message, and generally people send by WhatsApp, I let them remain anonymous, okay? I cannot underscore the magnitude of work required by online classes. Imagine catering to 10 different individuals in the same classroom. Please be aware that not all students, especially those with special needs, can be accommodated or facilitated in the online environment, whether it is due to their disability or their level of cognitive ability. In an effort to care for each child and leave no student behind, packages are being prepared for these students by their teachers on a weekly and bi-weekly basis. In addition, conference calls are being made to check on their social and emotional well-being. Therefore, several formats are being employed to facilitate the teaching or learning process for these students. And Ms. Lynch here on the live, she's saying she's a huge lobbyist for persons with disabilities. So she wants to know what about them or their parents, and what should be extended to people with students with disabilities who are, so if the parents are unable to assist these students, you know, what should be extended to them? I believe that's what she's trying to answer. Ms. Lynch, you can correct me if I didn't get that absolutely right. Tara, and I want you to answer that one.
Okay, so the first comment is very true. We have some students, depending on if they have a physical disability, who cannot use devices. And as I was spoken before, a lot of schools have been creating packages, especially special needs schools, and delivering or having drop-off points for parents to get these packages so students can still do work. In terms of them being online, for instance, a lot of my students are online, but according to what impairment they have, they need specialized software and specialized devices. The visually impaired students will need devices that have the specialized screen reader software. For the hearing impaired students, you would need to have teachers would need screen recorders, because you cannot lose the student can't lose you. You can't present your screen and they can't see you, because you have to be signing all the time. So teachers have to use different technology. They have to use different apps when they're teaching the hearing impaired. And then students with autism, you have to bear in mind the social issues. You have to bear in mind how long they can stay online. So it is a case by case, because these students have individualized educational plans. So it's a case by case what each child can do. So some of them will have online, some of them will have packages and also be online. So they'll do their written work while being online with the teacher, while others will just have conferences by WhatsApp or by the phone with the teacher. And teachers in special needs are really going above and beyond in order to get that instruction to those students. So it's about building a very deep relationship with those parents and catering to each child's needs. So even though in special needs, the classes might be smaller, these teachers really have to do a lot more work, especially in the online environment, to cater to these students.
Okay. Somebody's asking along that same line, so I'm just going to answer it quickly here. So if the students are given the hard copy packages, if the parents aren't capable, then who reviews the work?
Well, I haven't come across that in terms of, there's always somebody who can assist. There's always somebody who can assist. But in those cases, I believe the teacher will have to liaise with the guardians and try to figure out what to do. But in the cases we've had, even if the parent isn't available, there's somebody to assist the child with that package. And that's what's been happening.
Yeah, I understand.
So
Yes, we really have to be a village right now.
yeah, certainly.
Yes. We have to have a very, very good relationship with our parents, especially with those students with disabilities, because they need more support than the average student.
So if I could jump in here really quickly, I don't want to sound fanciful, because I understand it's an extremely difficult circumstance, but I try to look at education holistically. So it's experiences within and outside of the classroom. And has there been any discussion along the extracurricular activities aspect when it comes to teaching and when it comes to the experience of students? Because I remembered as a young man, much of my learning experience at school occurred on the outside. Has there been any thought process, perspectives on how we can essentially maybe bring that process online, or maybe have it in person again, or some level of social distancing or what's not, that students can have those experiences that we had as younger people?
Julian, would you
If I
like
may,
to touch
because
it? Yeah,
by
go ahead.
nature, I teach physical education, and during our return to the face-to-face last term, you would appreciate that there was a definite need to restart some physical activity, because during that third term, being home and being inside because of the lockdown, and you should stay inside, a lot of persons, the most convenient thing to do would have been just to touch up that fridge around the corner, So coming back in, you would have seen a lot of children and teachers too, who would have put on a few extra pounds. So for me as a physical education teacher, getting back in the outdoors, obviously still following the protocols, but I have a pastor to work with. So you were able to space the children out where, obviously, if they're doing physical activity, they can't possibly breathe in the mask. So you were able to space them out. They were able to take off the mask, do the different exercises. They still had the bonds. We were still able to cover the objectives in terms of decision making, if there was any conflict, the work between themselves, and of course the physical side of the objectives in terms of their motions and strength building again and getting them up to par. Now we had the unfortunate reality, because in first term you would know that many schools would have been starting their training for the athletic term, which was to be this term. We would have had a change in the football and cricket terms, where the cricket is usually the first term and the football is the third, but there would have been a switch this time around. So football was supposed to be last term. So you would have had football, you would have had the cross country, you would have had badminton, you would have had road tennis, these programs facilitated through the National Sports Council. So in terms of that activity, everyone was looking forward to it. But because of the restrictions of the gathering and the no contact, then you weren't able to do that. Now they were trying to make some adjustments where that is concerned to have little to no contact, where you would test skills rather than have the actual competition for these different sports. But based on the timing, because what they wanted to do then is teach the skills within the schools during the term and then have it early this term before the full brunt of sports. One of my other hats being knapsack, because I'm the assistant meet director, we would have put forward a proposal to the COVID monitoring unit in terms of how we were going to possibly run a knapsack this year. One of the major changes we would have been having is no spectators. So that meant it is all technology then from there, because you still want to see your child perform. So it had to be a case then of changing to the online platform. So with all of these changes, but we still need to have those physical education sessions. I would say that the physical education teachers, and I know this for sure for primary, they are online as well. So whether we do sessions where we are doing the exercises with the children during the lesson, if it is a case of showing videos and then the video is playing and we are doing the same things, we're still doing the stretches and so on, we are still making sure that we and the children are staying as active as possible. Obviously, the health science is still being taught, especially now, because it is giving information on what COVID is, how to stay safe, how to keep your immune system strong. But it is also know that you may be doing less physical activity and eating more. It's about the choices now that the parents buy and put in the house, because I may be eating a lot, but if there's a lot of salad and a lot of fruit, then that's what is there. So it is not a case of high sugar, high fat, those kinds of foods in the house. So it's also about making those healthier choices with the restrictions of the physical activity, but physical activity is still being done.
That's actually very, very good to hear.
Thank you.
I want to ask a question about what people are calling netiquette. Because I hear so much about it all the time about, you know, students sitting in positions at home on the computer, parents walking behind them or other people walking behind them, sometimes naked, shouting things in the home, lewd things and so forth. And there's certain things that can be avoided and that should be pointed out to the parents or those in the home with those students. Some of us are privileged enough where, like, my children, they're far apart from each other when they're in school, and they try to make sure that they're sitting in a position where I don't have to walk behind their screen. I work from home, thankfully, walk behind their screens when they're in the classroom. But we have to admit that there are people who can't afford that. There are people who live in one-room houses, two-room houses, and so forth. There are people who live in homes with 12, 13 people in the house, sometimes more, in very small houses, and so forth. How do we mitigate that? What is the best path forward? My son teacher, she said to me recently that, you know, well, I guess not just to me, but to all the parents, that they need to be in the classroom with their cameras on, right? And they need to have their microphones on. And I understand that. And because she needs to know what they're doing. She needs to know that they're actually paying attention to the lesson and so forth. But with those requirements, with me, that's fine. Sometimes I might shout, but I'm being more, you know, aware not to say, oh, bring this, whatever, remembering that he's in class, because we just come out of vacation. So it actually took me a couple of hours to realize, oh, well, we're not on vacation anymore, we're in class, right? But what about an environment where that can't be helped.
Well, what we had done for the first time, round one of online, is we try to tell children where you know that your background is a difficult background, all right? That just look for a wall, just prop yourself to the wall if you're sitting on the bed, because we don't know what inside the house looks like. If you can't have the chair to the wall where the wall is in the background, no one can pass behind you, right? The only thing that you're worried about then is if whoever else is in the house is going to say something, if it is too loud, if they're going to be heard in the microphone. So we actually tell the parents, setting up for this online thing, I mean, you could do your part to help. Let this be the online spot in the house where the child or the children, depending on how their timetable is, if there are no clashes, you have a spot in the house where they sit and say, this is where you are going to do your sessions. Nobody's going to pass, nobody's going to interrupt, and you are going to pay attention. There's some parents, and I mean, hey, when being realistic about it, not having that space in that house. There's some parents who say, you know what, my cousin is next door, or my next door neighbor, they have space, the children are in the same class, because we've actually had children who are on one device and the two of them are basically next to each other because of the same thing that you mentioned. There is no space in terms of what their household looks like. They don't feel comfortable opening up in that way because they don't want to be embarrassed. So, they're helpful parents, helpful neighbors who say, come over and you can share the screen or bring your device. You can go in a different room. Somebody can go in the patio, or somebody could be by the living room or whatever. And they have done that.
What are your views on that, Tara?
I was about to say, also our teachers are flexible. Like for instance, too, with the Google Meet, you have the option of the virtual background. So if you have a background that you don't want people to see, because you can't control your home environment, you can use the virtual background to protect yourself. And you can, and I know teachers have done this, you let students mute their mics, and if the child is in a very noisy environment, the camera's on so you can see they're doing their work, and they have their virtual background, and they can type their answers into the chat rather than turning their mic on so that you don't have to be exposed to their background. Some children will tell you right away, Mom, I live in a certain kind of neighborhood. You're going to hear certain things. And the name of the game of online education is flexibility.
Right.
All right. Yes, we want everybody online. Yes, we want them with their cameras and their mics on. Mute the mics. Use a virtual background. Then you can still participate in the class. We don't see your background. You can type in the chat and you can still get things done. But also too, there were guidelines sent out by the Ministry of Education for online etiquette for both teachers and parents. And parents should try their best to adhere to the policies set out by the Ministry of Education. Appropriate dress is another one, not only for parents, but for students, that they should be appropriately dressed. There's a lot of etiquette in terms of how to behave online. And that also helps with discipline. Because one of the reasons a lot of students are not motivated in the online environment is because they're no longer in a disciplined environment. If their home doesn't have any element of discipline, and then you come into the classes and you do whatever, then you don't learn. So even if you're in that environment, you can say, like Julian said, you have a wall, you have your virtual background, you have your mic, you're dressed decently, you're dressed appropriately. I feel like students can still get into a routine, get back into a school routine, and they can learn online. So that's how we can address some of these online etiquette issues that we're having. Because remember, we're going into people's homes. They're no longer at school. And so it gives a whole new dimension to classroom management because you cannot manage people's homes.
Flexibility.
Right, but what you have to do, like I said, you have to build a deeper relationship with those parents and ask them to accommodate you and see what can be done.
All right, I have something here from Rudy, who I told you earlier couldn't be here. He's your second vice president, I think he is. So he sent me some ergonomic tips for homeschooling environment, and he gave me the permission to send it on to any teacher who would want a copy. You can send us an email at jpourworldview@gmail.com. Terry, you can probably put that up again at some point, or I'll put it up in a message on Facebook. You can send us jpourworldview@gmail.com, and I will send you a copy of that ergonomics tips from the BUT. All right.
Just let me add here, Ayo, that Rudy is the chairman of our Health and Safety Committee, which has been one of the busiest committees in the Barbados Union of Teachers in recent years. I mean, prior to COVID, we would have had the issues of, sick buildings, in terms of refurbishments being done to schools, change of furniture for students and teachers. This committee has been an active committee throughout the school year during the summer for the summer maintenance program, because we ourselves had to be going around to schools all over the island, checking to make sure that, the work is being done, if the schools are going to be ready, if we had to make a plan B in case schools weren't ready to start in September. So that is one of the committees where not only the persons who are on the committee do the work, but basically all hands are on deck with our executive to try to make things happen for that committee.
Okay. Devron, Terry, you want to ask anything else before I go on? I feel like I've been talking for the last half an hour.
You know you. No, I was going to point towards, I mean, we've had this discussion, we've talked about, the technological issues that teachers are facing with, the health issues, the extra workload, the administrative burdens that they've been having. And I want to bring the discussion now, if I'm allowed, towards that of financial reward. So in the best of years, I'm also a teacher, right? So in the best of years, I believe that teachers are underpaid, right? Particularly at the primary and secondary schools. And in a country like Barbados, where the best minds end up in teaching, right? Our best minds end up in teaching for the most part in Barbados. And teaching is, of course, a very important profession. It has tremendous influence on the future generations. And so in the best of years, I like to advocate always for teachers being paid more money. We need our best to be in teaching, and we need to reward them appropriately, like it's best practice in some of the countries that we try to adopt other practices from, like the Scandinavian countries. Teachers are very well rewarded, right? At this point in time, given the COVID pandemic and all of the extra additional steps that teachers are required to take in order to ensure students' learning, is this not another, arrow in the heart of those who would say, okay, well, no, teachers are well paid, they're just glorified babysitters? Is this not another point that could be put forward to the powers that be, the ministry, the government, to say, listen, we really need to reward teachers appropriately for the tasks, because even in the best of years, they're underpaid, and now look at what you're asking them to do. You don't really have much of a work-life balance, and this really does require some financial reward. So what is the union doing to ensure that this happens? I guess it's the
Well, you know that they say that we get three vacations a year, but what came out of online teaching last year, and I found it to be very ironic, was the number of memes and videos relating to homeschooling and the parents having to act as teacher. And then they realize, you know what, my child isn't as sweet as I think the child is, or my child really doesn't pay attention as they should in class, because, hey, if I'm asking you 1 + 1 and you telling me but that's something that you should know based on your age. So parents now got to see firsthand what it was to be a teacher, to see their child in fine form, so to speak. Because you would have teachers, granted, when you have year level meetings, they may say, the child is a little talkative, they're a little too playful during class time. But then when you home with mommy, they're able to do things that the teacher can do to make sure that you stay in line and you follow the instructions. But they got to see it. For us, honestly, when we look at what is a profession, and we look at those who are highest paid, we believe, and I speak for myself as well, we set the foundation, okay? It begins with teaching. You learn to count, to spell, to read, to write. It begins with a teacher, whether it is a teacher at school, whether for religious reasons or other personal reasons, a parent decides to homeschool the child has to be taught. For us as teachers, I mean, we have gone above and beyond. We buy our own materials because we want to make things happen. We look out for children as if they are our own. And my students, they will tell you that. I treat you like you are a part of me, okay? We put that kind of effort into you. So whether it is buying materials, whether it is putting our money into breakfast programs, whether it is, you know what, these children have issues in terms of what they may wear, their personal hygiene. I mean, there's so many different dynamics we as teachers experience and encounter every day at different schools. It doesn't matter if it's a large school, a suburban school, we have similar issues. We have similar issues. We try. And, you know, we get a lot of knock from the public and say, man, y'all got it easy, man. All you got to do is put up work on a board or tell the children, open this book and do this page. It is not as easy as that when it comes to the child not understanding, and you have to teach it over, because at the end of the day, we're not just teaching for the lesson, we're teaching for life. Right. Everything we do at this stage now is for you to learn, for you to grow, for you that when you become parents, you can teach your children as well, because that is also a reality in Barbados today. We have parents who don't have the literacy level enough to teach their own children, to help their children with homework. And this is even at the infant level. So I am hoping that the government can have a little higher appreciation of us and decide, you know, we can raise your salaries for all of this hard work and this extra work, because let me tell you, there are so many teachers that put that extra. There are teachers that actually put aside a part of their salary to help children. And you see during that summer vacation, there are teachers that buy material, they may get uniforms, they buy the books and everything to make sure that those needy children have the same and equal opportunity as those who can afford it to learn something.
I just want to jump in here a second as well to talk about the fact that there are many students who depend on school to get food, and teachers subsidize them, help them with that. And in the last shutdown, I know of teachers who have raised funds and used their own money and gone to the households of these children who they know usually depend on the school meals, and they have delivered food, they have delivered supplies for these students. Teachers really do treat students like they are their own. They buy supplies for those who can't, buy supplies, snacks, fruit, drink, do all kinds of things for these students who because we care about our students. So I mean, I do agree, and I hope that you're advocating for a higher salary. I must put in a plug for ITCs at this point, because right now with the online environment, if you listen to everything they say, please contact the ITC. Parents, you have a problem, contact the ITC. Teachers, you have a problem, contact the ITC. Students, you have a problem, contact the ITC. I would like them to subsidize the ITC's telephone bills, because our minutes, we're using much more minutes than we would have, because everybody now has to contact the ITC. So at least that I would like advocated for. So if anybody's listening, I'd like my phone bill paid. Hi.
I think these things are right? As for, you know, you're incurring greater costs in terms of electricity bills now, right? You're incurring costs associated with the phone, right? So these are things that are these are, you know, arrows in your quiver that you can use to make the case for higher salaries. Because I think, like I said, don't want to repeat myself, but in the best of years, I think teachers have a good case to be made in Barbados. If we look to the best examples, we can see teachers being rewarded. The best examples, I mean, in the world. And in the case of Barbados, I think you know, the present circumstance makes it even more necessary for us to think about properly rewarding our teachers.
I agree. I even last semester, well, not semester, last term, the child I said earlier that is preparing for 11 plus, his teacher taught them for a full week after school had ended, just to make sure that they caught up on some concepts and stuff that she thought was important for them going back into this school term right now. So teachers do go above and beyond. I would have gone home and take my vacation. I ain't letting nobody. I would have been so glad to be home lying down, my feet up. So kudos to our teachers. Yeah. Any other questions, Devron?
Well, I'm curious, or I would rather take it, I guess, to a more positive note. So at the start of the pandemic to this term or right now, what would you say were some of the successes as it related to bringing students and teachers online? What were some of the things that were done well or have improved over time?
Harry, you want to take this one first? From your end as ITC, because you would have seen the development of teachers. They're coming to you less in terms of instruction. How do I do this? How do I do that? So she may be best to answer this one.
All right, let me just say, first of all, personally, I have always wanted to see the integration of technology into our curriculum. And what, I'm not saying I'm grateful for a pandemic, understand what I'm saying, but what the pandemic has done is accelerated, excuse me, and it has been a catalyst, and therefore we are now having technology blended with the curriculum. And I am so happy to see it, because technology is the way forward. And because everybody, we had to do it. And then there are some students who are actually doing better online. There are some teachers who have found, since they started it, they've found apps, they have found software, they've found things that make their lessons more engaging. They're enjoying it. Of course, there are teachers who are not, but it's such a pleasure to watch teachers who at first were who were saying, well, technology, it can't work, this can't work for this child, to say, hey, we have found things that work. And one of the things I want to touch on too is the relationship. You see, the relationship with parents, it deepened because we had to talk to each other to get through the online teaching and the COVID environment. Those relationships with parents have deepened, and that's also a blessing to see as well. So I am just so happy to see how technology has been integrated into education, how teachers are enjoying it, how teachers are finding new things. And like Julian says, they're coming to me less and less. So, I'm getting a little bit more sleep as time goes by. Just a little bit more sleep as time goes by. And we see how it benefits students. Some of those students who did not do well in that face-to-face environment, being in a class, are doing well online, because they're born into technology. They like the technology, and it speaks to them. So it speaks to their learning style, and they're doing well. And that is great to see. So those are some of the successes I would say I have seen for sure since it has started. Julian?
Yeah, one thing for sure that I would have seen is the students, their willingness to try, their willingness to say, you know what, I want to be an expert at this. I want to be good at this too. One thing I did in one of my classes last year with the class 4, we would have been doing some food and nutrition as a part of health and family life education. And I gave them the opportunity to make a presentation. So we were talking about the food groups. We were talking about building our immune systems to make sure that when it comes to COVID-19, that our body is at its strongest in terms of the resistance to make sure that we remain healthy. And they say, you know what? I think I'm going to make y'all present. And they were all for it. And I told them, you know what? You are going to dress for the occasion as well. So you have the option, if you were doing it as a press conference, or if you're doing it like on the news. And I was blown away when that lesson came. And I had invited the principal into the lesson as well as the class 4 teacher. And they too were really impressed. I mean, the suits were on, the ties were in position, they were presenting their screens. Some of them, obviously, with the help of their parents, they would have had spreadsheets. They would have shared their screens to websites with certain information. They were on the ball. So as time went on, by trial and error, the more time you spent with it, and obviously the relationship building now where parents are closer to the children in terms of learning, wanting to see them succeed. They were all together in it, and the finished product was excellent. I even did something in my class where all of the children who presented, they chose who was the best presenter, and they created a digital award for them and they placed it in the classroom. So that is something permanently there for them. Some of them took their photo and they would add their photo on one side and grid it with the award. So they were happy with that. So it's good to see that as time goes on, they use and practice it, certain things come natural to them. It becomes second nature to them, where they don't have to think about it. Now, furthermore, they're helping the parents, they're helping other children, and they say, you know what? We use Google. Let me look for a new app to do this or do that. And some of them are actually teaching themselves and say, but teacher, do you know there's this app that can do this and you can share your screen and you can do that. So for them, it's been a good ride and unfortunate circumstances, but as Tara mentioned, there is still good out of this situation.
So teachers are actually learning new skills also along with the students. One of the things I hope is happening, because I know I work in an app-based environment. I use apps for almost everything that I do, but a lot of these apps have to be paid for. Are you being assisted with paying with the cost of those apps and so forth?
Actually, some of the teachers would have been looking for apps online where during the pandemic, they offered free membership to teachers. So we were more or less using those apps. For the other apps, we don't get any compensation for it. We would have to do it out of pocket. But there were some websites which were giving free membership to teachers during the pandemic.
Okay, excellent. I have a question here from a viewer via WhatsApp. I would like to remain anonymous. My question is, had EduTech being, I guess, fully implemented some 20 years ago, do you think that this would have helped teachers, students, and Barbados as a whole, right, well, in this environment right now, assuming that's what they mean, that infrastructure, though it was expensive, would have benefited us today? Do you agree? And what are your views?
Yeah.
You can go ahead, Tara. Yeah.
All right, Tara, you can begin.
I would say yes. If we were integrating the technology all along, then when they go into the online environment, it would not be such a sharp adjustment. Yeah. So for instance, in the third term last year, when we had the shutdown in March and students were online. Now for my school, we went full face-to-face for term one. But when they came back in, the teachers were still integrating the technology in their face-to-face classes. And what has happened now that they have gone back home, like I said earlier, there's much less cases of people needing assistance because the students have been using it here at the school. And then a lot of them too have been using it so they can do it without their parents know. No, they've gone home. So of course, if the infrastructure is set up already in the school system, it is kind of easier, not easy, but easier to adjust to the online platform. So that is where I was telling you that I was very happy that it happened because it forced that. What we were trying to do with EduTech a long time ago, it came upon suddenly and it worked. And therefore, we got that integration. And therefore, as time goes on, the students and the teachers will get more savvy. The problem was how sudden it happened, to get the training and get the classes running in time. That is where all the stress comes. But had it been there all along, it would not have been such a strenuous process.
Yeah, and it's really politicians too, that they shouldn't really play politics with certain things, especially those things that benefit the society as a whole, right? If it benefits the society, then it benefits the country. If it benefits the individuals in the society, really, it benefits the country. And if it benefits the country, then it benefits you, the politician. So I've always said that there's certain things that really shouldn't be in the realm or should not be treated as political footballs. And I think that this is a lesson in that today. Unfortunately, 2020, you know, hindsight is always 2020. And that year,
Oh boy.
yeah, the year wasn't a good one. We've got some very good comments online for you guys. They like your viewers really liked the program. They think that it generally was very informative and that you guys did a really good job. Um, and I want to join them in 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 giving you guys that kudos. Also, you guys were excellent guests. I just want to tell you, if you have anything that you want to leave with us right now, I want you both to take a few minutes and you can make any statement that you wish to. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let me just say that, as I said earlier in the program, there's some good out of COVID, where teachers and parents know we are a tag team in making sure that children gain knowledge, they gain meaningful experiences. It is trial and error on both parties, okay? It is the reality that there's sometimes we're going to get it wrong, but we try to fix it. We try to make things happen because at the end of the day, we want to see the children win. There are some teachers, for them, I mean, there are many professionals who do it. Their success rate is based on how their clients, how their workmates perform. And for us as teachers, I mean, we feel encouraged. We feel more confident to know that our children are learning, okay? That our children are able to explain things to their parents. Some children have taught their parents how to use the technology. When this first started, we would have had where the ITCs would have sent home information on how to create the email address. And there's some of the children that show the parents how to create the email address and not the other way around, you know? So they've kept an open mind about it. For my school in particular, and I have to give my school a little plug here, that little school on the hill in St. Joseph, St. Bernard's, we would have had a program with the principal, Mr. Wilson, that we had parents coming together. The PTA was the foundation of it all, making sure that this happened for the children. Parents understood you had to do your part on your end at home. We do our part in terms of what we instruct, and we make sure that they pay attention, they dress well, they behave themselves, and they learn. And that is basically what it is all about. So from me, even from the union perspective, trying to continue to agitate for our members to give their concerns and voice their concerns with the ministry to see how we can negotiate and come to some common ground as to how we can go forward together for the benefit of everybody, because we're looking at the greater good for the greatest number of people. So once we are all on the same page where that is concerned, I think there's a higher success rate across the board for teachers, for parents celebrating their children's successes, and for children feeling empowered to know, I got it done, I can do more.
Thank you, Julian. Tara?
I was about to say, Julian has said pretty much everything I wanted to say. So I will just leave it with this one point. We are in this together. We are in this together. And what I want to say is, moving forward, that teachers and parents, we need to help one another. That is the only way that we are going to get through this. And flexibility is the name of the game. With every student, we're talking about catering to individual needs. With every student, every school, every age level, there are going to be different needs. There are going to be different things we're going to need to do for them to be successful in this online environment. So I'm begging everybody to be flexible. We have to understand that we cannot do the same things across the board. If we are going to help our students, we need to cater to each and every one of them and do things differently in order to get that done according to the skill level of the teacher, the skill level of the students. And we're in this together. Let's work through it together. We are building the plane while we fly it.
Both of you. Terry and Devron, anything else that you guys want to say before we wrap up?
I certainly appreciated learning and really hearing firsthand the experiences that teachers are facing, both the positive and the negative. And I would really say, as a person who supports technology as well and integrating technology into education, is that my advice would be to document the successes. Because we don't want a situation where the pandemic ends and we go right back into face-to-face and, just the traditional brick and mortar style of learning. So document the successes, document what some of the weaknesses were, build a proposal, and help develop a policy going forward into how we can integrate technology into teaching for the long run.
Devon, why are you trying to steal my potential PhD study?
Go ahead, Terry.
I think I want to just agree wholeheartedly with everyone's sentiments there. We can't allow. I mean, we've come to this point in time where technology has been forced upon us, but we can't go back to how things were before. Right. So I agree with that. I just like to end by saying, given everything that has happened and that has occurred, I like to make the case, if the teachers in Barbados wouldn't make the case, I like to make the case for them that they need to be properly rewarded for the hard work that they are doing, that they do in regular years, but particularly in this year. I think we need to look around the world for good examples of how teachers are treated, and we have some excellent teachers. I always like to say that the best minds in Barbados usually end up in teaching. I'm not saying that because I'm a teacher, right? But I'm just saying it is the case. When you look around Barbados, some of the bright sparks from my class, while I was at university and in secondary school, they're teachers, right? And I'm sure this is the case. And not only that, in terms of we have our best people there, but they're the most, they have a very important job and they're very productive. They're reproducing the society. And so we need to properly reward them for that very important task.
Thank you. And thank you both for coming. This was really a good session. And I really appreciated how candid you were with your comments and your answers to the questions. And to the audience, thank you guys. You guys were great also with your questions and your comments. So all I have to say is thank you guys for coming. Thank you for sharing. Thank you to those of you who took the time to join us again today with your questions, your comments, your ideas. I just want to remind you guys, please wash your hands, sanitize, wear your mask, and physical distance. Please, if you enjoyed this episode, please share the page, invite your friends to join us right here next Sunday at 5 p.m. And what does Spock say? Live long and prosper. Take us to it, Terry.